you've probably noticed in this video, my hands. They were worse in the last taping, but they're still not looking very good. It's not because I got spray paint on myself. This is scarring from poison ivy that I had. I'm not immune from having karma. I'm not immune from having really bad things happen to me because sometimes I don't figure out what I should be doing. What's the best use of my energy, my time?
Well, and, isn't it true also that the Law of One group had a sort of a bad sort of demise in a sense that there were a lot of negative things going back and forth, and one of the people committed suicide?
That's
is that
correct.
Right?
That's correct. This is not something that we usually discuss because it's kind of upsetting, but the man who was asking the questions in the Law of One series did commit suicide.
So I mean, but what it speaks to, you know, is the sense that you're saying if somebody becomes evolved enough to follow sort of a good path, but begins on some level to let in negativity and whatever, they go through sort of, you know, I guess a night of the soul in which they become tested on a higher level, in which the tests are tougher. And if they don't pass, this is when you get, you know,
car accidents,
all this fallout.
Yeah, serious injuries to the body, physical death in some cases, complete financial loss. Some people end up, you know, having to flee the country because they get in trouble with the government. The IRS audits them and they end up, you know, completely broke, bankruptcy. It's very, very common that you see people involved in channeling have their lives collapse. Because when you start giving a message to humanity, you have to live by it very strongly. And if you don't do that, then there's very serious repercussions. The questioner of the Law of One series, Don Elkins, kind of dwelled a little too frequently on the negative side because there were negative entities attacking their group, trying to kill Carla, the one who was actually doing the channeling. It's very difficult to be involved in this work. In the process of doing our film, several of the people involved in the film have had very serious health problems that almost killed them, actually.
And this is the film, the Convergence film
yeah.
that you're working on?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you could explain just in a short way what that film's about and what you're involved in.
Well, the purpose of the film is primarily to express to people in an entertaining way that our minds are interconnected with each other. It's a very rudimentary but very important principle that you have to be able to absorb to understand how we're interconnected. The conventional person has had some kind of ESP at some point in their life, but they're not really sure if it's real. Once you understand that your mind is like a radio tuned into other people's minds, it's not separate from other people's minds, and when you think a thought, it radiates out into your environment and affects the people around you, that's a very powerful principle. So the desire of our film is to bring this knowledge out to the public without going into UFOs and without going into any of the really esoteric stuff I've been talking about with you guys. But I have put together a really elegant, fascinating body of scientific data showing how the mind is a conscious energy field. And we've arranged it into a trilogy of films. The one we're doing now is the first of that trilogy. It started out as just being a documentary, and then we decided we were going to do a dramatic film. And we're now on our third rewrite of the dramatic script, the screenplay of that film. We're working with a man who's a very high-ranking member of a film school here in LA. And he's brought a lot of really dynamic and unique elements to our screenplay, which we're very excited about. So you could kind of think of it as Da Vinci Code meets The Secret, is kind of where we're going, or what the bleep do we know. You're not going to have talking heads or interviews in the film. It is going to be totally filmic. It's going to be a script with, you know, a plot and characters and drama and so forth. But the science is going to come out in the course of the arc of these characters. There's not a whole lot more I can say about it because, frankly, you know, we're in rewrites and we don't even know where the script is going to go. It could change altogether. So
great, but so this circles back around to the fact that that some people involved in the making of this film, you're saying, are being sort of attacked by a certain degree of negativity.
Yep.
And this is really fascinating. And maybe you could talk about what people can do who find themselves on a good path and yet they get this escalation of the negative side in which they need to protect themselves.
That's a really, really important point. A lot of the people who are going to be seeing this videotape are going to be experiencing negative greeting in their own lives. The more involved you try to get in healing and evolving this planet, the more negative greeting you're going to experience. There are basically two ways that you can solve negative greeting. The first way is to abandon your quest. If you're really getting your butt kicked and you're trying to do something for the planet, you can basically drop out of the race, get a normal job, marry, have a child, you know, become a muggle again, if you want to use the Harry Potter term, and kind of get out of the game, and the negative greetings will stop. They'll leave you alone. You won't have to go through all this hell. The other way is to be really, really diligent. If you want to be in service to the planet, it takes a life commitment. You can't go in and then pull out easily. One of the things that's important is the principle of honor again. If you make a solid commitment that this is what you're going to do, that you're going to be a spiritual teacher, you're going to be somebody who's going to try to evolve consciousness, you can't like sort of be into it one week and then not into it the next week. You have to stay consistent. It's a spiritual path. So it also is very important that you live by your principles. I have heard many, many stories, even back from the early mid-90s, of people who went on like seminars with channelers. And the channeler is giving one message to their followers in these groups, but then acting very nasty towards their people, like on the tour bus. Don't talk to me, you know, get away from me. And there's even one case in which it was a female where she was experiencing horrible karma on this trip, burning herself, falling, and people were realizing that this was because she wasn't living by her own teachings, but she completely wouldn't accept that. And the guy who I knew who was talking about this was one of the members of the trip and was actually heckling her about it, which is not a nice thing to do either. But in order to avoid negative greeting, the most important thing I can tell you is to choose your battles carefully. Don't get involved in something that you don't really have the time or the desire to complete. No one is requiring you to become some type of world figure, world savior. The most important thing that will keep you from negative greeting is preserving consistent harmony in your lives with yourself and with other people that are close to you. Negative greeting will happen to you when you lose the harmony with the people you're closest to, when you start arguing with them, bickering with them, attacking them, when you start getting selfish, when you start getting jealous, when you start feeling greed, when you start saying, I want to do this basically so I can make money because I want to spend money on myself. You earn money to serve. You don't earn money to gratify yourself, to go off to Vegas and play the slot machines or to have a prostitute or whatever. You earn money so that you can recirculate it on behalf of the planet. And that's why in the Law of One Contact, the group was told over and over again, guard the harmony in your group very carefully. Don't let yourselves get into arguments with each other. Don't let yourselves fight with each other. It's all about the attitude. It's about maintaining your frequency. And the reason why this happened to me is because I didn't maintain my frequency. I let certain things really get me upset, angry, and my hands got scorched. So I'm not above it. It can happen to anybody. And
right. I think that's really great, you know, for people to hear, because it's clear that you're on this kind of a path, regardless of where you are on it. And we're not going to make any suppositions about that. But what's important is that people begin to develop tools to protect themselves as they do journey. And there are going to be a lot of people watching this that are on that same journey as we are.
It's really, you know, people love to try to make it complicated, and they love to say, well, you know, you got to do your violet meditation and the violet flame or the white egg of light around you. And all that stuff is technique. You can do that if you want to. Trying to stay in a meditative state is important, but really, honestly, it's all about, there's an absolute law in the universe, and it's free will. If you're on the negative path, you don't care about free will, but you're constantly having karma come back to you because you infringe on it. On the positive path, the definition of the positive path is that you're not infringing on free will. If somebody asks you for your help, you give them your help, but you don't offer service when it's not requested. That's another thing that's Like fundamentalist groups, for example, whether it's Christian or any other religion, fundamentalist Muslim, fundamentalist Buddhist, fundamentalist Christian. If you're going out there and proselytizing people and saying, you're not thinking right, you're not believing the way you should, we have the answer, we need to tell you what's going on, guaranteed you're on the negative path. You cannot be on the positive path and be telling other people how to think or what to do with themselves, period. If somebody wants your help, that's great. So you put out a website, you put out videos like this. If somebody wants to watch it, they can. But if somebody's been watching this video for 4 hours or however long we've been going, and they're sitting here laughing at me and saying, David is a jerk and David is an egomaniac, well, I'm not asking you to watch the video. I'm not telling you this is how you should think. If fundamentalist Christianity works for you and that's your spiritual path, then go for it. Do it. If you're a Buddhist and you want to chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo all day long, that's great, fine. I'm not going to tell you how to believe or what to think because that's the negative path. The positive path honors free will. If you want to avoid negative greeting, you preserve the free will principle very diligently. You don't infringe on other people's free will. You attempt to promote harmony and love and a positive attitude as much as possible. And the more you can do that, it guarantees that you're not going to have problems. That's why most of the time, negative greetings don't happen to me, they happen to people around me. Because what they will do is they will find the weakness. They will find the chink in your armor. Somebody could have a relatively normal life if they're not trying to help the planet. They get involved with me, they become a business partner of mine, and all of a sudden they're having all kinds of disasters happen to them. Health problems, even to the point of almost killing them. And it's not like I'm giving them a voodoo hex or anything. It's because if they start infringing on what we're doing, or they start trying to steer me in a more negative or self-serving direction, they're accountable for that much more than they would have been before.
Well, it's also that they're also moving to a certain level. They're saying, okay, I'm up to this. I'm able to step up to another level, and therefore they're actually inviting the challenges.
That's right.
And they're higher challenges. So in a sense, it requires greater strength on their part.
Absolutely.
So it's actually on a certain level independent of you, that the people around you they're stepping up is what they're doing, in their own way, as you are stepping up.
That's true.
And we see it all around ourselves that this kind of thing will happen.
Yeah.
So it's very important, though, also, just to backtrack a tiny bit, in which conflict has healing a bit, parts to it, so that to avoid conflict or to bury it is also not the answer. Absolutely.
That's a wonderful point. This gets into the concept of the protocol of avoiding negative greeting. When you're being negatively greeted, you have an entity that's coming to you saying, I want to enslave you. There is a way to handle that, okay? You basically want to love the attacker. That's the part that nobody can get their hands around. Like with the government, for example. If you're out there writing these articles saying the Bush administration is catastrophically ignorant and these buffoons are these jack-offs, if you're sending hate to them, you're guaranteeing that you're perpetuating the cycle of hate. Hate only leads to hate. So you see the negative entity as being a person like you, part of the oneness that's confused because it believes in separation, it believes in pain and control and manipulating people. So you send love to the entity because you recognize that there's a part of yourself that's like that. There's a part of yourself that's manipulative and controlling and dominant. But you also draw boundaries. Boundaries is the key. Boundaries is where you say, I love you, I love you, but there are conditions because I'm not going to let you do this. I'm not going to let you infringe on my space. If every spiritual conundrum you found yourself in had a very simple answer, enlightenment would be simple. All you'd have to do is have a book, right? Like my book, for example. This was the German version of it, actually. We didn't show that before. It's been published in 2 countries now. And you say, well, okay, in page 303, it says here that, okay, when somebody is telling me that I'm a jerk, all I have to do is say, screw off. Okay, screw off. And boom, your problem is solved. It's not that simple. The real way that enlightenment works is that there's always these gray areas where you have to use your wisdom and come up with something on your own.
Right, and this gets back to love and wisdom.
Right.
So we actually want to move up the chakras, we want to unite love and wisdom, and move forward from there.